US President Donald Trump has announced that he will impose more sanctions on Iran. Trump said economic pressure would be maintained unless the leadership in Tehran changed course. He has also said that if Iran renounces nuclear arms, it would be a very prosperous country and he would be Iran's best friend. The announcement comes after Iran announced that it would exceed internationally agreed limits on its nuclear program. Frictions between the US and Iran have been at fever pitch since Thursday, where Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps had downed a US surveillance drone. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif took to Twitter to tweet a map with detailed coordinates, which he said show a US drone shot down by Iran. He said there was no doubt where the craft had been when it was brought down. The US contends that the drone was in international airspace. However, US State Secretary Mike Pompeo has rejected Iran's claims. He has said that US has made its position very clear. US President Donald Trump has ordered border agents to begin a mass roundup of 2,000 migrants' families that have received deportation orders. This comes after Trump announced on Twitter that the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement would begin deporting quote-unquote millions of illegal aliens. The tweet is sped up operations that were already underway. The family roundup is likely to begin with pre-dawn raids in up to 10 cities, including Houston, Chicago, New York, and Miami. According to North Korean state news agency, Kim Jong-un has received a personal letter from US President Donald Trump. The details on the letter was not disclosed, but Kim Jong-un described the letter as excellent and said that he would seriously contemplate the interesting content. Earlier this month, Trump has said that a beautiful letter had been sent to him by the North Korean leader. Talks between the US and North Korea have reached a stalemate after meeting in Vietnam between Kim and Trump in February ended without an agreement. US and Taliban will open fresh negotiations next week. US Special Representative on Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, has said that two sides would start the 7th round of talks on June 29th. Khalilzad is hoping to negotiate a deal under which the United States would withdraw troops first sent after the September 11, 2001 attacks. Boris Johnson has repeated his claims of Britain leaving the European Union by the end of October. Johnson, who's leading the race to become Britain's next Prime Minister, spoke at an event in Birmingham about Brexit. Boris Johnson has set himself as the only candidate who will deliver Brexit with or without the deal. However, Johnson refused to answer any questions about the police being called to his house about a woman. Residents of a southern district of Khartoum are now holding gatherings at night to revive the pro-democracy movement. People in Sudan are dealing with power outage, blocked internet and heightened security. Ruling generals in Sudan have cut internet services in the wake of a deadly crackdown on demonstrators. Ever since military ousted Omar al-Bashir, there has been a constant power tussle. In Sudan, people who wanted a civilian-led government have been protesting as they were unhappy with the shift of power. The UN top human rights official Michelle Bachelet met with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas. The meeting comes amid the prolonged struggle for power in the country. He has also held talks with opposition leader Juan Guaido. It was Bachelet's first trip to the South American country as chief of the UN watchdog. There has been a high international pressure on Maduro for allegedly silencing opponents with the jail term, torture and excessive violence. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido has said that the visit of UN human rights chief was indicative of the country's serious humanitarian crisis. The UN top human rights official Michelle Bachelet has met both Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido and President Nicolas Maduro separately. Guaido has urged for an urgent solution to the undergoing crisis with shortages in food, water and medicine. first trip to the South American country comes amid heightened pressure on Maduro and his power struggle with Guaido. A small twin-engine plane used for skydiving crashed in the Hawaiian island of Oahu, killing all 11 people aboard. And of course, the Federal Aviation Administration initially believed there were 9 people on board, but have since revised that number. The airplane burst into flames upon hitting the ground near the Dillingham airfield. The authorities have said that the airfield will remain closed until further notice. Mauritania began counting ballots from its presidential elections as the ruling party claimed its candidate was poised to win a landslide victory. The election was the first in Mauritania's history since independence from France in 1960 to choose a successor to a democratically elected president. President Mohamed Abdelaziz seized power in a coup in 2008 but has agreed to step down and abide by a 2-term limit of office. If Saturday's election ends with no clear winner, a runoff election due to be held on 6 July. Anti-Russian protesters gathered in the center of Georgian capital Tbilisi for the third day of demonstrations. Thousands of people with banners and placards calling Russia an occupier state, and the protest was sparked by the appearance of Russian lawmaker Sergei Gavrilov. President Vladimir Putin has also temporarily banned Georgian airlines from flying to Russia amid rising tensions between the two countries. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Baghdad and other cities of Iraq asking for better reforms, services and end to corruption. People waved yellow cards at the Tahrir Square in Baghdad to symbolize the final warning to the government. Iraq had been struggling to fight corruption and economic crisis as the country's government has been paralyzed by failed reforms. Baghdad's rally was a part of the peaceful gathering throughout the country over the month demanding change. Several hundred climate activists evaded police to enter an open-cast mine run by energy giant RWE in western Germany. The activists carrying flags and banners clashed with the police at the Gersweiler mine, which is one of Germany's largest lignite coal mine. The German police mobilized hundreds of officers and a water cannon to prevent protesters from blocking the site. The mine in Germany's area, in fact, has been at the heart of many environmental protests. Thousands of Albanian opposition protesters are gathered outside the office of Prime Minister Edi Rama. This was part of the ongoing protest against the government. The leader of Albania's ruling Socialist Party has determined that municipal elections would be held despite opposition unrest in the country. Centre-right opposition parties are boycotting the vote after months of demanding an early national election. They have accused the government of vote rigging and other wrongdoings as well. Hundreds of Yellow Vest protesters marched in Paris, marking the 32nd consecutive weekend of protest. Although the number of protesters have diminished, demonstrators continue to denounce police violence and President Emmanuel Macron's economic reform. Named after the high-visibility jackets, the prolonged protest that initially began as opposition to fuel price hikes turned out to be the biggest threat to President Macron's presidency. China will need to spend 3 trillion yuan over 3 years to improve sanitation and clean up its heavily polluted rural environment. Government says the funds would be required to build to build clean rural toilets. They in fact also treat household waste and construct sewage treatment plants. The state has allocated 7 billion yuan to promote China's rural toilet revolution this year. Another 3 billion yuan will be spent on improving the living environment of villages in western and central China. Gold prices have soared in India owing to the growing US-Iran dispute. Gold prices in India hit a record high of 35,430 rupees, tracking gains in the world market. The high prices were characterized by uncertainty in the global markets and a weak rupee. Purchases of the precious metal were lesser compared to usual as the prices remain high. Trade wars and newly imposed tariffs also contributed to the soaring prices. The Ministry of External Affairs hosted dinner for all foreign envoys. It was a welcome dinner during which External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar had informal interactions with many envoys. The dinner took place in a hotel in New Delhi. India also invited Pakistan to dinner, and Deputy High Commissioner Saeed Haider Shah represented his country. Tensions have been rising between India and Pakistan after a Pulwama terror attack in which 40 CRPF soldiers were killed. Thousands of people took to the streets of Chilean capital Santiago for the annual Gay Pride Parade. Going under the anti-violence and anti-discrimination banner, people demanded equal rights and a break on violence against the gay community. Santiago saw the biggest march with people waving rainbow-colored flags and they were also wearing colorful outfits. There were also other marches in cities in the center and south of the country. The LGBTQ community has rallied for Chile to approve equal marriage or the adoption of children by same-sex couples. Thousands of people joined a gay pride parade in Romania's capital months after a referendum seeking to ban same-sex marriage failed. Romania is in fact one of the few members of the European Union to ban marriage or civil partnership for same-sex couples. Romania decriminalized homosexuality in 2001, but members of the LGBT community say that they are still discriminated against by some sections of the Romanian society. Russian President Vladimir Putin laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier to mark 78th anniversary of the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. 22nd June is considered a day of remembrance and mourning in Russia. Other Russian officials, including Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, also took part in the remembrance events in Moscow.